For centuries, millions of believers have visited the Vatican believing they knew every corner of its history. But beneath the feet of them all, there are doors that have never been opened, not even to some of the greatest experts within the Church itself. The official version claims it is merely out of respect for the dead, but documents and historical records suggest the reason may be quite different. What if I told you that behind those walls there could be discoveries capable of changing what you know about the origin of Christianity and about civilizations that history insists on treating as disconnected? Why, in the 21st century, with technologies that allow investigation without causing any damage, is access still forbidden? Today you will learn about the documented facts, the blocked attempts to open them, and the most disturbing hypotheses about what may be hidden in the sealed tombs that the Vatican has never allowed anyone to explore. Beneath St. Peter's Basilica, in the heart of the Vatican, there is a labyrinth of chambers and corridors that officially make up the so-called Vatican Grottos and the Vatican Necropolis. It is a documented fact that part of these areas has never been open to independent research, even after decades of advancements in archaeological methods that cause no structural damage. Since the excavations carried out in the 1940s, authorized by Pope Pius V, internal reports record that certain accesses were blocked and remain so to this day. Before that, there are mentions in ecclesiastical records from the 17th and 18th centuries of underground areas restricted to only a few members of the high clergy. But these documents do not provide detailed justifications. The pattern is not exclusive to the Vatican. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered between 1947 and 1956, had part of their content kept secret for decades, only being fully disclosed in the 1990s. In 1976, an excavation at the Basilica of St. Clement in Rome was interrupted, officially due to the risk of collapse, and never resumed. When looking at these cases as a whole, an inevitable question arises: why are historically relevant sites directly linked to religious contexts closed precisely when they could reveal new information? In the Vatican, the official justification for not opening certain doors is respect for the dead and heritage preservation, yet without presenting technical reports that rule out safe alternatives such as ground-penetrating radar or laser scanning. Experts argue that these methods would allow mapping the interior without violating the integrity of the burials, but there is no public record that such proposals have been considered. The institutional silence and the absence of independent inspections fuel the hypothesis that the real reason for keeping certain tombs sealed goes beyond preservation. If it is only an ossuary, why maintain an absolute blockade for centuries? What exactly could be behind a sealed door that would require such strict control? And, more unsettling, could the answer be connected to the historical disappearance of inventories and artifacts that once appeared in ecclesiastical records, but today are missing from any accessible catalog? This is the lead that takes us directly to the next point of the investigation. Ecclesiastical inventories from the 19th century, partially preserved in the Archivio Apostolico Vaticano, describe artifacts removed from excavations in the Middle East, especially in the region of ancient Mesopotamia and Palestine. Among them are stone inscriptions and fragments of pottery with unusual symbols, cataloged in handwritten notes from 1831 and 1847. Part of these pieces was transferred to Vatican storage, but according to researchers who had limited access to the archives, these items no longer appear in the current collection records. This case is not isolated. In 1909, during excavations at Tel El Muqayyar in southern Iraq, missionaries linked to religious orders sent artifacts to Europe. Some ended up in museums, others disappeared without any public documentation of their destination. A similar situation occurred in 1933, when pieces taken from excavations in Syria, conducted by French teams and supervised by ecclesiastical representatives, had part of the material recorded as unidentified in the final reports. Experts in alternative history suggest the hypothesis that some of these artifacts might contain dates, writing systems, or representations incompatible with the accepted chronology of ancient civilizations. There is no conclusive proof of this, but the lack of public access to complete inventories keeps this possibility open. It is important to note that, officially, the Vatican denies any improper retention of archaeological material and claims that all items in its custody are duly cataloged. Still, independent researchers argue that access to old documents is often limited, with sections restricted under the pretext of preservation or confidentiality. Why do entire lists of objects recorded more than a century ago have no correspondence in current collections? Were they lost, destroyed, sold, or relocated to undisclosed locations? And more provocatively, if there truly are pieces capable of rewriting part of human history, who decides whether or not the world is ready to know them? This question becomes even more intriguing when new evidence points to architectural patterns and burials that not only contain human remains but also follow precise astronomical alignments, an enigma that leads us to the next point of this investigation. Three-dimensional mapping studies conducted by archaeologists authorized to partially examine the Vatican's underground areas have revealed that certain tombs and chambers follow specific alignments with astronomical points. In 2015, an analysis by researchers from the University of La Sapienza in Rome identified that some burial axes in the necropolis align with the position of the sunrise during the winter solstice, something unusual in purely Christian contexts. While it is not rare to find astronomical alignments in ancient archaeological sites, the presence of this pattern in burials linked to ecclesiastical history raises questions about the true origin of these structures. Similar cases have been documented outside the Vatican. The megalithic complex of Nabta Playa in Egypt presents alignments with the constellation Orion dating to around 6000 BC. The Basilica of St. Clement, also in Rome and built over older temples, shows architectural correspondence with specific solar events. Some scholars suggest that such alignments could indicate the reuse of pre-Christian sacred sites, preserving part of their original orientation. This hypothesis is reinforced by historical documents confirming that throughout the Middle Ages, the Church built temples and basilicas over former pagan worship sites, often maintaining the original architectural orientation. However, there is no academic consensus on whether the alignments identified in the Vatican tombs are intentional or coincidental. The absence of in-depth independent studies keeps the field open to interpretation, especially for those investigating ancient mysteries and mysterious astronomy. If such orientations are indeed intentional, why keep them hidden or not disclose them in widely accessible scientific publications? Could they be remnants of advanced astronomical knowledge inherited from older cultures, or merely structural coincidences incorporated by medieval builders without full awareness of their original meaning? What is certain is that any attempt to investigate these correlations further runs into administrative barriers and institutional decisions that restrict access. And it is precisely in these barriers imposed in recent decades that we find the next critical point of this investigation. Over the past 5 decades, several formal requests to open sealed chambers in the Vatican have been denied, even when submitted by internationally recognized teams. In 1975, a joint proposal from the University of Rome and the Pontifical Institute of Christian Archaeology to carry out a non-invasive inspection of closed sectors of the necropolis was shelved without any official public response. In 1998, archaeologists connected to the Pontifical Commission of Sacred Archaeology requested authorization to use ground-penetrating radar in the restricted areas beneath St. Peter's Basilica. The request was denied with the generic justification of respect for the dead and preservation of the sacred. In 2013, documents obtained by journalists from Corriere della Sera confirmed that a new request, this time backed by structural conservation experts, was also rejected despite presenting a technical plan that guaranteed zero physical impact on the structures. Officially, the Vatican's position is that any opening or inspection of burial sites must be treated with extreme caution and reverence, preserving the spiritual and historical integrity of the spaces. Still, critics argue that modern technologies allow for safe investigations and that the systematic refusal raises suspicions about the existence of sensitive content. Among the hypotheses proposed by independent scholars is the possibility that certain archaeological findings, if revealed, could alter established interpretations about the origins of Christianity or about cultural contacts between ancient civilizations. There is no direct evidence of this, but the blocking of investigations prevents such hypotheses from being confirmed or dismissed. Why, when faced with scanning methods widely used at archaeological sites around the world, such as in the pyramids of Giza and the ruins of Tikal, does the Church choose to maintain absolute silence? What historical, cultural, or theological implications could arise from opening a single sealed door? And more importantly, who holds the ultimate power to decide what humanity can or cannot know about this hidden past? These questions remain unanswered, sustaining a mystery that continues to fuel theories, debates, and parallel investigations.